Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving deep today, folks, really deep. We're looking at some absolutely foundational stuff, a huge map of philosophical ideas from classical India right through to, well, some major shifts in Western thought.
It really is foundational. And what's so fascinating, I think, isn't just what these philosophers believed, but how they built their systems, the architecture of it all.
Exactly. That's our mission today, isn't it? To pull out that architecture of knowledge. How did these different schools define what's real? How did they figure out what's true? And, how does that lead to understanding or maybe even liberation?
Spot on. We're focusing on the structures, the logic, how they put it all together step by step.
So we'll start with the really structured thinking in Orthodox Indian traditions, Nyaya and Samkhya specifically. Then we'll pivot, look at how the West wrestled with knowing reality, empiricism, idealism, the whole evolution there.
It's quite a journey, but seeing these structures side by side is incredibly revealing. It's like getting a toolkit for thinking itself.
A toolkit. I like that. Especially when we start with India, where the rules for argument were just incredibly rigorous.
Unmatched, really.
Yeah.
So, shall we begin with Naya?
Let's do it, Naya. Now, the sources tell us it's Astika, Orthodox, accepts the Vedas. But, hearing Orthodox might make you think it's all just faith-based. It's really not.
Not at all. It's primarily the school of logic. That's its reputation. The whole point of Naya is figuring out justice. The word Naya itself means that, and developing this incredibly clear, systematic way of thinking.
Because fuzzy thinking leads to problems, right? Leads to suffering.
That's the core idea. If you misunderstand the world, your actions will be wrong. So getting knowledge right, and not just any knowledge, but validated, proven knowledge, that's the absolute foundation for moksha, for liberation.
I always picture Naya like a really strict courtroom. You can't just say something is true. You have to prove it according to their rules.
That's a perfect analogy, seriously, because their whole system revolves around defining admissible evidence. What counts as proof? They call these sources of valid knowledge the pramanas.
Okay, the pramanas. How many are there?
4 main ones in the Nyaya school. The first, the absolute bedrock, is prachaksha. Perception.
Okay, so just seeing, hearing, touching, direct experience.
Exactly. Direct, unmediated contact through the senses. It's the starting point. If you can't perceive it directly, you need other tools.
Which brings us to the second one. This is the logic part, right? Anumana.
Yes, anumana, inference. This is where that courtroom rigor you mentioned really comes in. It's reaching a conclusion based on what you've observed and what you already know from past experience.
This is the famous one, isn't it? The smoke on the hill means fire.
That's the classic example, yeah. But it's not just a guess. Oh no. Nyaya formalizes it. They have a 5-step process, the angas, to make sure the inference is absolutely watertight. This structure basically dominated philosophical debate in India.
Okay, 5 steps. Let's break that down. This really shows their commitment to, unshakable proof. It feels way more detailed than a simple Western syllogism sometimes.
It really is. It's designed so you explicitly connect the specific observation to a universal rule and then apply it back. No hidden assumptions allowed.
All right, walk us through the fire on the hill using those 5 steps. How does it work?
Okay, step 1. Prachijna, the thesis. You state what you're trying to prove. Simple, the hill has fire.
Got it. Step 2.
Head 2. The reason, this is your observation, grounded in perception, prachaksha. Because there's smoke.
Okay. Thesis, reason. What's next? This is the crucial one.
Absolutely crucial. Step 3. Udaharana, the example. This links your reason smoke to your thesis, fire, using a universal rule backed by a concrete known instance.
Yeah.
Wherever there's smoke, there's fire, like in a kitchen hearth. You have to provide a real-world example you both agree on.
Okay. So you can't just make up an abstract rule. It has to be grounded in something observable, something everyone knows. That's clever. It stops purely theoretical arguments.
Exactly. It forces you to show a verified connection. If you can't give an example, your universal link, they call it vyapti, is shaky. So, step 4 is upanaya, application. You apply that universal rule back to the specific case you're looking at now. This hill also has smoke.
Right, connecting the general back to the particular.
And finally, step 5, nigamana, the conclusion. It follows necessarily from the previous steps. Therefore, the hill has fire. QED, basically.
Wow, that is thorough. Pratijna, hetu, udaharana, upanaya, nigamana, thesis, reason, example, application, conclusion. You can see why it was so influential.
Definitely. Okay, so beyond perception and inference, there's the third pramana, upana, comparison.
Comparison. How does that work as proof?
It's about identifying something new based on its similarity to something known. often through testimony first. Like, if I could tell you a gaur is a wild animal that looks a lot like a cow, you go,
Then when I actually see one in the forest, I recognize it because of that comparison you gave me. That act of recognition is the upamana.
you got it. The knowledge comes through that comparison. And the fourth and final pramana is shabda, testimony.
Relying on what someone else says.
Well, yes, but crucially, it has to be a reliable source. An apta, someone trustworthy, an expert or authoritative text like the Vedas in their context. But it applies more broadly, too.
Like a teacher telling you Delhi is the capital of India, you haven't directly perceived it, maybe can't infer it easily, but you trust the source.
Exactly. For certain kinds of knowledge, direct experience or inference is just impractical. So trustworthy testimony is accepted as valid.
Okay, so we have 4 ways to know something's true. Direct perception, rigorous inference, comparison, and reliable testimony. It feels like a pretty solid toolkit for knowledge.
It is. But Naya didn't stop there. Once they figured out how to validate knowledge, they needed to map out what there is to know, the basic building blocks of reality.
Ah, the categories, the padarthas, right.
Yes, the 7 padarthas. This is the ontology, the fundamental map of everything that exists, according to Naya and its sister school, Vaishika. Understanding these is key because, again, mistaking one for another is a source of bondage.
7 categories to map everything. Let's hear them.
Okay, first, dravya, substance. These are the things that have qualities and actions. They list 9. Earth, water, fire, air, ether. But also time, direction, soul, atman, and mind, manas.
Wait, time and soul are substances. That's interesting. Shows they see them as fundamental, independent things.
Exactly. They're part of the basic furniture of the universe. Second category, guna, quality. These are attributes of substances: color, taste, smell, size, number, etc. Qualities can't exist on their own. They have to inhere in a substance.
Right. Redness needs something to be red. And third,
Karma, action or motion. Pretty straightforward. Upward, downward movement, contraction, expansion, locomotion is what substances do.
okay, substance, quality, action. That covers the dynamic stuff. What about the others? You said there were 7.
The next 3 deal more with relationships and concepts. Number 4 is samanya, generality or universality. This is the shared property that lets us group things like treeness in all trees or humanness in all humans. It's what makes abstract concepts possible.
The opposite of that would be uniqueness, right?
Precisely. Number 5, deshisha, particularity. This is what makes one individual thing distinct from every other individual thing, even down to the atomic level. This is super important for Vaishesha's atomic theory. Each atom had its own unique vishisha.
Wow, okay. So they had a concept for individuality built right into the structure of reality. And number 6?
Samavaya, inherence. This is a special kind of relationship, an inseparable connection, like the connection between a quality and the substance it's in, the color in the cloth, or between a whole and its parts. It's not just temporary contact, it's an intimate, necessary bond.
Inseparable inherence. Okay, that leaves one more.
The last one is fascinating, apava, non-existence or absence. They actually included the absence of things as a category of reality.
Non-existence is a category. Why?
Because to fully understand what is, you need to be able to talk about what is not. They classified different types, the absence of a pot before it's made, prior absence, the absence of a horse and a cow, mutual absence, the absence after something is destroyed. It completes the map.
That's remarkably comprehensive. Substance, quality, action, generality, particularity, inherence, and even non-existence. A place for everything. It's such a detailed, pluralistic view.
It really is. And it sets up a fascinating contrast with our next school, Samkhya, which takes a radically different approach. Forget 7 categories. Samkhya splits everything in 2.
Right, Samkhya. Known for its stark dualism, everything boils down to just 2 fundamental realities, Purusha and Prakriti. That's a huge simplification compared to Nyaya's list.
The ultimate simplification, maybe. You have Purusha, pure, unchanging, passive consciousness. Think of it as the seer, the witness. There are countless Purushas, individual centers of awareness. And then you have Prakriti, everything else. Matter, nature, the unconscious potential. It's the dynamic, evolving principle, the scene.
Eternal, distinct principles. And this simpler ontology, does it mean they have fewer ways of knowing, fewer pramanas than Nyaya?
It does, yes.
Yeah.
Samkhya typically accepts only 3 pramanas: perception, prajaksha, inference anurmana, and testimony shabda. They usually omit upamana comparison.
Why drop comparison?
Possibly because they felt it could be reduced to either a form of inference or maybe testimony. It fits their more streamlined, dualistic view, fewer categories, fewer ways of knowing.
Okay, so let's focus on Prakriti, because that's the active side, the source of the entire universe, right? How does it work? It starts in balance.
Exactly. Initially, Prakriti is in a state of perfect equilibrium called guna samavasta. This balance is maintained by three fundamental forces or qualities inherent within Prakriti itself, the famous gunas.
Oh, the gunas, you hear about these everywhere. Sattva, rajas, tamas.
Understanding the gunas is absolutely key, because their interplay is the universe unfolding. They are. 1. Sattva, the quality of lightness, harmony, clarity, knowledge, peace. 2. Rajas, the quality of activity, energy, passion, dynamism, change, also agitation. 3. Tamas, the quality of inertia, heaviness, darkness, obstruction, ignorance, lethargy.
So Prakriti is this potential held in balance by these three forces. What kicks off creation? What disturbs the balance?
This is the elegant part. It's simply the proximity or the presence of Purusha, the consciousness. Purusha doesn't do anything. It just looks. Its presence is enough to disturb the guna equilibrium.
Just by being there, Purusha is just a witness.
Just the witness, the drashta. Crucially, Purusha is not the creator or the doer, the karta. Once the gunas are disturbed, Prakriti starts an automatic evolutionary process. It unfolds according to its own inherent nature, driven by the interplay of sattva, rajas, and tamas. No external god needed to wind it up.
So the whole universe is basically Prakriti's show put on for Purusha.
That's a great way to put it. And Samkhya maps out exactly what evolves in that show. The famous 25 tattvas, the fundamental constituents or principles of reality, it's their detailed inventory of existence.
25 tattvas. Okay, how does this map work? From the subtle down to the physical.
Precisely. It charts the evolution from the unmanifest root cause all the way to the gross elements we experience. It's like saying, look, this is everything. This is what you and the world are made of.
Let's trace that evolution. Where do we start?
We start with the two fundamental principles. 1, Prakriti, the root potential.
Mm-hmm.
2, Purusha, consciousness, which is the 25th tattva, but it's outside the evolutionary chain, just enabling it.
Okay, Prakriti stirs. What's the very first thing to emerge?
The first evolute is Mahat, the great one. This is cosmic intellect, or buddhi in the individual. It's the highest faculty of discernment, understanding.
Intellect. And from that universal intellect, we get individuality.
Exactly. Mahat gives rise to ahankara, the I maker, the ego principle. This creates the sense of me and mine. It's the source of our feeling of being a separate individual, often mistakenly identifying with the body or mind.
So Prakriti, Mahat, intellect, ahankara, ego. What comes next? The ego branches out.
Yes. Depending on which guna is dominant in the ego, it produces three sets of things. 1, from the sattvic aspect, manas mind, the coordinating sense mind that processes data, plus the 5 sense organs, jnana indriyas, hearing, touch, sight, taste, smell, and the 5 action organs, karma indriyas, speech, grasping, walking, excretion, procreation. 2, from the tamasic aspect, the 5 subtle elements, tan matras, the essences of sound, touch, form, taste, and smell, pure sensory potential.
Wait, Rajas doesn't produce anything directly?
Rajas provides the energy for both the sattvic and tamasic evolutions. It's the active principle needed for creation to happen.
Okay, so we have mind, sense organs, action organs, and subtle elements. What about the physical world we see?
That comes last. The 5 subtle elements, tanmatras, combine and become grosser, evolving into the 5 gross elements, mahaputas, ether, space, air, fire, water, and earth. These make up the physical universe and our physical bodies.
So adding those up, that's Prakriti, Mahat, Hankara, Manas, 10 organs, 5 subtle elements, 5 gross elements, plus Purusha, that's 25 tattvas. A complete map.
A complete map of everything that isn't pure consciousness. And this map is crucial because it shows you exactly what you as Purusha are not. Bondage happens when Purusha gets confused and identifies with ahankara or manas or the body parts of Prakriti's show.
So liberation, moksha, is realizing I am Purusha. I am not any of these 24 other things.
That's the essence of it. Freedom comes from discriminating Viveka Purusha from Prakriti. Suffering is literally a case of mistaken identity.
That realization leads to, what's the term? Isolation.
Kaivalya. Isolation or aloneness. It's achieved through self-realization, which naturally leads to detachment, vairagya, from Prakriti's gunas and their effects. When Purusha fully recognizes its separate nature, Prakriti's evolutionary dance ceases for that particular Purusha. The show ends. Freedom.
It's a profound idea. And if Samkhya provides the theory, the map, yoga is the practical guide to actually making that journey.
Exactly. Yoga is the applied science of Samkhya. It takes the same metaphysical map, Purusha, Prakriti, the tattvas, but focuses intensely on the how. How do you actually achieve Kaivalya?
Does yoga add anything conceptually?
It has one significant concept absent in classical Samkhya, Ishwara, a special eternally free, omniscient Purusha. Ishwara serves as a focus for devotion and meditation, a kind of guide or ideal to help the practitioner along the path.
Ah, okay. And the core practice in yoga, the goal is controlling the mind.
Yes, the famous Yoga Sutra definition, Chitta Vritti Nirodha, the cessation or control or quieting, the turnings, the modifications, the fluctuations of the mind, ajita.
Why is stopping the mind the key?
Because the mind, manas, buddhi, akana, is prakriti in its subtle form. It's the screen onto which prakriti's show is projected. If you can still the mind, stop the fluctuations, then the underlying reality, the pure consciousness of Purusha, shines through, unobscured.
And how do you achieve that stillness?
Through two main principles, abhyasa, persistent, dedicated practice, and vairagya, detachment, dispassion towards worldly objects and experiences. Practice builds the strength to steady the mind. Detachment cuts the roots of the desires and aversions that make it fluctuate.
This sounds like it requires serious discipline.
Immense discipline, which is laid out in the Ashtanga Yoga, the Eightfold Path.
Right, the 8 limbs. Can you list them briefly? It shows the comprehensive nature of the path.
Sure, it starts with ethics, yama, social restraints, nonviolence, truthfulness, etc., and niyama, personal observances, purity, contentment, self-study. Then comes the physical, asana, steady posture, and pranayama, breath control. Then the mental stages, pratyahara, withdrawal of the senses from external objects, dharana, concentration, holding the mind on one point, dhyana, meditation, sustained concentration, and finally, samadhi, absorption, deep meditative state where the sense of self dissolves.
Wow. It's a complete system, ethical, physical, mental, all designed to untangle Purusha from Prakriti step by step.
It really is. Which brings up a fascinating question, doesn't it? We've seen these incredibly detailed Indian systems built on categorization, logic, and this fundamental consciousness matter split. How does this whole approach stack up against how Western philosophy tackled the problem of reality, especially when they started getting really worried about whether we can trust our own senses?
Yeah, that's a great transition. We move from these intricate maps of inner and outer reality based on ancient texts and logic to the West, where, especially after the rise of science, the big question became, how do we know anything for sure, starting from scratch, just based on experience?
And the figure who really kicks that off in the modern era is John Locke. He's the anchor for empiricism. His core idea fundamentally challenged centuries of thinking about innate knowledge.
The blank slate, right, tabula rasa.
Exactly. Locke argued the mind at birth is completely empty, no preloaded ideas, no divine imprint. Everything we know, everything has to come from experience.
What kind of experience?
Two kinds, according to Locke. Sensation data coming in from the outside world through our senses, and reflection in the mind, observing its own operations, like thinking, doubting, believing. That's it. All knowledge is built from these raw materials.
And he broke down the ideas we get from experience. Simple and complex.
Right. Simple ideas are the basic, indivisible units of experience, like the idea of yellow or solid or pain. You can't break them down further. Complex ideas are built up by the mind, combining, comparing, or abstracting simple ideas like the idea of an apple, combination of red, round, sweet, etc., or justice, an abstract concept.
Okay, that seems reasonable enough, but then he dropped a philosophical bombshell with the primary and secondary qualities distinction. This really caused problems down the line.
It absolutely did. Locke wanted to separate what really belongs to the object out there in the world from what is just an effect in our minds.
So primary qualities are the real deal.
Yes. They are qualities inherent in the object itself, inseparable from it, whether we perceive them or not. Things like solidity, extension size, figure shape, motion or rest, and number. These are objective, measurable properties of matter. The apple has a certain size and shape regardless of who's looking.
And secondary quality.
These are not in the object itself. They are powers that the object's primary qualities have to produce certain sensations in us. Things like color, sound, taste, smell, warmth. These exist only in the mind of the perceiver.
So the redness of the apple isn't in the apple?
According to Locke, no. The apple has a certain surface texture, primary quality, that reflects light in a certain way, primary quality, which causes the sensation of red in our minds, secondary quality. If no one's looking, there's no redness, just the physical properties.
Okay, I see the problem starting. If all we ever directly experience are our ideas, including those secondary quality sensations, how can we be absolutely sure about the primary qualities or even the external material substance causing them?
Bingo. That's the crack Locke opened. And George Berkeley peered into that crack and said, Why assume there's anything behind the ideas at all?
Berkeley, the idealist. He took Locke's empiricism to an extreme right.
To its logical, if radical, conclusion. Berkeley argued that it makes no sense to talk about unthinking, unperceived matter existing independently. If all we ever know are ideas, then maybe only ideas and the minds that perceive them exist. He denied the existence of material substance altogether. Radical idealism.
His famous line summarizes it perfectly. Esse est percipi.
To be is to be perceived. An object, like a chair or an apple, is nothing more than the collection of ideas, sensations. We perceive its color, shape, texture, taste. If no mind is perceiving those ideas, the object literally ceases to exist.
That seems crazy. What about the tree falling in the forest with no one around? Or my desk when I leave the room? Does it just pop out of existence?
That's the obvious objection, and Berkeley had an answer. He wasn't a solipsist, believing only his own mind existed. He needed a way to explain the apparent continuity and objectivity of the world. His solution: God.
God saves the furniture.
Pretty much. Berkeley argued that things continue to exist even when no human mind perceives them, because they are constantly being perceived by the infinite mind of God. God's perception ensures the stability and coherence of reality. The desk is still there because God is always perceiving it.
So we went from Locke's matter-based world, partially known, to Berkeley's mind-based world held together by God. This sounds like a philosophical dead end. How did they move forward?
It definitely felt like a battle between those trusting only sense experience,
Yeah.
leading potentially to skepticism about matter, and those trusting reason or divine ideas. The rescuer, the synthesizer, was Immanuel Kant.
Kant, a towering figure. He tried to bridge the gap between empiricism and rationalism.
Exactly. Kant had immense respect for science and the power of experience, like Locke, but he was also woken from his dogmatic slumber, as he put it, by Hume's skepticism, which seemed to undermine causality itself. And he couldn't accept Berkeley's idealism. He realized both sides were missing something crucial: the active role of the mind in structuring experience.
So the mind isn't just a passive blank slate receiving data.
Not at all, according to Kant. The mind is an active processor. It comes equipped with innate structures, filters, or rules that it imposes on the raw data of sensation to make coherent experience possible in the first place. This is a huge shift.
It sounds almost like the structured approach of Naya again, but located inside the human mind.
There's a fascinating parallel there, yes. Kant believed objective knowledge is possible, but only because our minds universally apply the same structuring principles. This led him to his crucial distinction between phenomena and noumena.
Okay, explain those. Phenomena is what we experience.
Phenomena is the world as it appears to us. It's reality after it has been filtered and organized by our senses and our mind's innate structures. This is the only world we can ever know directly.
And noumena?
Noumena is the world as it is in itself, independent of our minds and perception. The thing in itself, das Ding an sich. Kant argued we can know that it exists, or at least we can't help thinking it does, but we can never know what it's like. Because the moment we try to experience or think about the noumenal world, our minds automatically apply their filters, instantly turning it into phenomena. We can't access the raw, unformatted reality. We're forever stuck on the side of the filter.
Here's where it gets really interesting then. What are these filters? Kant called them categories of understanding.
Yes. He argued the mind possesses innate, a priori, meaning before experience, concepts that structure all our thinking and perception. He identified 12 categories grouped under headings like quantity, unity, plurality, totality, quality, reality, negation, limitation, relation, substance, accident, cause-effect, community, and modality, possibility, existence, necessity.
So concepts like cause and effect aren't things we learn from the world, but rules our mind uses to make sense of the world.
Precisely. For Kant, if our minds didn't automatically impose categories like causality or substance onto the stream of raw sensations, experience would just be a meaningless chaos, a looming, buzzing confusion, as William James later put it. These categories make objective scientific knowledge possible because they are universal structures of human cognition.
So, the objectivity we find in science is objectivity about the phenomenal world, the world structured by our shared mental operating system. We agree on the output because we're running the same software, but we can never access the ultimate input from the noumena.
That's the Kantian synthesis. He saved science from skepticism and avoided idealism, but the price was admitting a fundamental limit to human knowledge. We can know the world of appearance with certainty, but the ultimate reality remains forever beyond our grasp.
It's a profound idea, and thinking back, there's an echo here of Samkhya, isn't there? The idea of a reality we experience, Prakritis evolutes, versus an ultimate separate reality, Purusha, that's fundamentally different in nature. Kant puts the division right at the interface of the mind and the world.
It's a fascinating convergence, approaching the problem from entirely different directions.
Okay, we've laid out some incredibly powerful, but also quite abstract architectures for understanding knowledge and reality, Nyaya's logic, Samkhya's dualism, Kant's mental filters. How do these deep structures actually play out when we try to organize our lives, our societies, our search for meaning?
That's the critical question. Let's start with the social and political realm. How do we structure a just society? Here, the work of John Rawls is really illuminating, particularly his theory of distributive justice.
Rawls. He was trying to find fair principles for how we distribute goods, opportunities, rights, and so on. How did he try to ground these principles, especially after Kant showed how subjective our viewpoint can be?
He used a brilliant thought experiment designed to force impartiality. It's called the veil of ignorance.
Right. You have to imagine you're designing the basic rules of society, but you do it from behind this veil where you don't know who you will be in that society.
Exactly. You don't know your race, your gender, your social class, your natural talents, your health, your wealth, your religion, none of it. You're stripped of all your specific empirical characteristics. You have to choose principles from a position of pure, rational self-interest, but without knowing how those principles will affect you personally.
It's like he's trying to create an ethical version of Kant's 8 priori categories, isn't it? Forcing people out of their subjective, phenomenal viewpoint to find universal, rational principles everyone could agree on.
That's a very insightful parallel. By removing knowledge of one's own circumstances, Rawls forces a kind of universal perspective. What principles would rational people choose, fearing they might end up in the worst possible position?
And Rawls argued they'd choose principles that protect everyone, especially the least fortunate. This leads to his difference principle.
Correct. After securing basic liberties for all, Rawls argues people behind the veil would agree that any social and economic inequalities are only permissible if they are structured to benefit the least advantaged members of society the most. And, critically, all positions and offices must be open to everyone under conditions of fair equality of opportunity.
So inequality isn't inherently unjust, but it has to be justified by demonstrably helping those at the bottom. It's a very structured attempt to build fairness into the system, acknowledging potential inequalities but regulating them ethically.
It is. It's an attempt to design a just, phenomenal society based on rational principles chosen from an impartial standpoint, precisely because we can't rely on some preordained noumenal order or divine right.
Now let's contrast that outward focus on structuring society with the inward focus we saw in the Indian traditions, the paths to moksha, liberation. They seem to use their architectures differently.
Very differently, yes. If you take a path like Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge, heavily influenced by schools like Advaita Vedanta, which builds on Samkhya concepts, the goal is purely internal transformation through understanding.
Using knowledge to cut through illusion.
Exactly. It involves rigorous self-inquiry, using logic and discrimination, echoes of Nyaya here, to understand the true nature of the self, Atman, and its identity with the ultimate reality, Brahman. It's about realizing you are not the body, not the mind, not the ego. You are the pure consciousness, the Purusha.
The goal is that ultimate realization. Tat tavam asi.
Thou art that. Liberation comes from dispelling ignorance, avidya, realizing the fundamental non-duality of the self and the ultimate. The architecture of knowledge here is used as a tool to deconstruct the false self and reveal the true.
Then there's karma yoga, the path of action, which seems more engaged with the world.
It is, but in a very specific way. Karma yoga, as famously taught in the Bhagavad Gita, emphasizes performing your duty, dharma, but without attachment to the results or fruits of your actions.
Nishkama karma, selfless action.
Right. You still act in the world, prakriti. You fulfill your obligations, but you detach your ego from the outcome. The key verse is, Karma nivadikaste mo philao kadachana. Your right is to action alone, never to its fruits. The goal is to act skillfully and dutifully, but without letting desire for success or fear of failure, driven by the gunas, bind you further. The action itself becomes a form of purification.
So, 2 distinct Indian paths. One using knowledge to transcend the phenomenal world, the other using detached action within it. Now let's swing back west one last time to existentialism, particularly Sartre. That's a radically different take on freedom and meaning.
Radically different. Sartre takes the implications of the modern Western trajectory, the loss of certainty, the limits Kant placed on knowing ultimate reality very seriously. If there's no God, no preordained cosmic plan, no knowable noonal realm dictating our purpose, then what?
Then we're just here.
Pretty much. This leads to Sartre's famous dictum: existence precedes essence.
Meaning we exist first, then we define ourselves. Unlike a tool, which is designed for a purpose first.
Exactly. A paper knife has its essence, its purpose, its design, conceived before it exists. Humans, Sartre argues, are thrown into existence first, without a predefined nature or purpose. We create our essence through the choices we make, the actions we take. We are radically free to define ourselves.
That sounds potentially liberating, but Sartre called it a condemnation. Why?
Because this absolute freedom comes with an equally absolute and terrifying responsibility. If there's no God, no universal moral law written into the fabric of reality, then we are solely responsible for every choice we make. And each choice isn't just for ourselves. In choosing, Sartre says, we choose for all humankind. We implicitly state this is how a human should be.
Wow, that's a heavy burden. Condemned to be free, no excuses, no blaming fate or nature.
None at all. It's the stark reality of human freedom in a world without inherent meaning. You must create value through your actions and take full responsibility for it.
So, looking across these paths, we see the Eastern traditions often seeking liberation from the perceived world by realizing an underlying eternal self or consciousness. While Sartre, representing a strand of Western thought, finds meaning precisely in the world through freely chosen action and responsibility because there is no escape or transcendent self to find.
It's a profound difference in orientation, stemming from those foundational architectures of knowledge we explored. Whether it's Nyaya's logic trying to nail down truth, Samkhya mapping the cosmic dance, Kant filtering reality through the mind, Rawls designing a just society, or Sartre facing radical freedom, they're all grappling with how to navigate existence using the structures of thought available to them, trying to bring order and meaning to the chaos. #DAG outro.
What a journey. We've really covered some ground today, exploring these deep architectures of knowledge, from the incredibly detailed logical system of Nyaya with its proofs and categories,
To the sweeping dualism of Samkhya and Yoga, separating consciousness from the intricate dance of matter described by the 25 Tattvas.
then pivoting to the West, tracing that line from Locke's empirical foundation through Berkeley's startling denial of matter.
All the way to Kant's critical turn, revealing the mind's own structures, the categories, as the very things that shape the reality we experience.
And what really stands out, I think, across all these vastly different traditions is this intense focus on how we know. The methodology, the structure, the validation, it often seems even more important than the specific what that is known.
Absolutely. They all recognized in their own ways that without a solid framework for knowledge, our understanding of everything else, reality, self, justice, meaning rests on shaky ground.
Which leaves us with a final thought, maybe a provocation for you, the listener. We've seen how even something as basic as perception, the color of an apple, the solidity of a table becomes complex under scrutiny. Whether it's a secondary quality for Locke, part of Prakriti's play for Samkhya, or a phenomenon structured by Kantian categories.
If our grasp on that basic level of reality is so mediated, so constructed, what does that imply about our certainty regarding the really big, complex things? How sure can we be about the absolute nature of the self or the final word on justice when the very tools we use to know our logic, our senses, our minds have these deep architectural features and potential limitations built into them?
It definitely gives you something to think about. This deep dive has hopefully given you a clearer picture of those foundational structures, a kind of blueprint to help you navigate your own explorations of these profound questions.